This is the Triratna Dharma training course for Mitras led by Sangharuchi. If you haven't already viewed the introductory orientation session with the reference 1.1.0, please do so on this channel. This recording is near a main road, so apologies for the background noise. The text of this material, entitled 1.1.1, Dharma Study as a Spiritual Practice, can be found on Free Buddhist Audio under the Community section. Other audio transcriptions and resources are available in the notes. One point 1.1 Dharma Study as a Spiritual Practice. Year 1, compiled by Vedanya. Introduction. The main aim of this course is to help people improve their lives and mental states, rather than to give information about Buddhism for intellectual interest. But to practice the Dharma, we need to know the Dharma, and Buddhist ideas have a transformative effect in their own right, by changing the way we see the world, and therefore the way we feel and act. So this course will have a large element of reading texts, reflecting on texts, and talking about texts. But it is important that we do not approach this with our usual attitudes to what we call study, which can bring in a sense of competitiveness or inferiority, or engage just our critical, rational intellect rather than our whole being. The following text, based on a talk by Padmavajra, offers a more creative way of relating to what we sometimes call study, seeing it as talking the Dharma, an essential and time-honoured spiritual practice that gives inspiration, develops wisdom, creates spiritual community, and gives us a context in which we can work on our habitual ways of being. Talking the Dharma, based on the talk Talking the Dharma, Padmavajra with extra material. For the early Buddhists, talking the Dharma, Dhammakatha, was an important practice. Dhammakatha means talking about the Dharma, conversing on the basis of the Dharma, relating through the Dharma. It means using the ideas, the ideals, the formulations and the symbol of the Dharma as a medium for communication. In the Maggiya Sutta, the Buddha describes Dhammakatha as one of the 5 things, along with meditation, that, when the heart's release is immature, conduce to its maturity. Talking the Dharma is as important as meditation. It's not an optional extra. At this point, someone will usually object that experiencing the truth in Buddhism is supposed to be about getting beyond words and concepts. But invoking the wordless prematurely will not liberate us on its own. Before we invoke the wordless, we need to free ourselves from the tangle of imprisoning concepts and worldviews we have already taken on without knowing it. We gradually replace these unconscious views with ideas we have consciously chosen, which are liberating and help us live a spiritually vital life. Only when we have done this can we go beyond concepts altogether. If we invoke the wordless too early, before we have gone through this process, we will simply remain imprisoned in the net of unconscious views we have, picked up from our family, friends, education, society and so on. To quote the awakening of faith in the Mahayana, we use words to get free from words until we reach the pure wordless essence. Exposure to the Dharma is transformative. When we study a text that originates from the mind of someone more spiritually developed than ourselves, we enter their mind. We enter a higher world. In a study group, we can spend some time with our spiritual friends living in this higher world, helping each other to experience it as fully as possible. This exposure to a higher world is a transformative experience. It can put us in higher states as surely as any meditation practice. It can even lead us directly to insight. In the Pali Canon, there are more cases of people breaking through to a new level as a result of exposure to the Dharma than as the result of meditation. Later examples include Huineng and Sangharakshita, both of whom experienced insight as a result of exposure to the Diamond Sutra. To benefit from this transformative effect of the Dharma, we need to approach it in the right way. We need to remember that we are entering into a higher world, and to be open to the atmosphere and magic, rather than simply focusing on the concepts. We also need to approach with an attitude of respect, acknowledging that the text originates from a being who is more developed than ourselves. If we dislike aspects of what is being said, we need to be open to the possibility that our reactions may say more about us than they do about reality. This doesn't mean we must agree slavishly, but we need to keep an open mind and be willing to try out unfamiliar ways of looking at the world. To approach a text in this way is an insight practice in its own right. Often our views are more connected with conditioning than with in-depth reflection. If we don't like an idea, it can be very helpful to ask ourselves why this is. If we are honest, the real answer may be, because I think of myself as such and such a sort of person. Because all my education emphasized a different view. Because everyone else in the circles I move in thinks differently. Or because if I really took this on, I would have to change in ways I am not yet ready to do. Becoming honest with ourselves in this way is a step to freeing ourselves from our fixed self-view, an important aspect of insight. Dharma study gives inspiration. When we immerse ourselves in the Dharma text, we enter the world of a more developed mind. We enter a higher world, and visiting a higher world is inspiring, if also challenging. We can make study more inspiring for ourselves and others by preparing a few points we want to bring out in the group. These could be points from the text we find particularly inspiring or eye-opening, things from our experience that illustrate what is being talked about, or ways the text could help us practice. Thinking of these before the meeting is an act of generosity towards the group, and if everyone prepares in this way, the study will be lively and inspiring. Dharma study is the way we develop wisdom. Traditionally, there are 3 steps to developing wisdom. Srutameyi prajna, wisdom which comes from hearing and learning. Chintameyi prajna, wisdom which comes from thinking and reflecting. Bhavanamayi prajna, wisdom which comes from meditative development. The last of these is real wisdom, but for just about all normal beings, the others are essential steps, without which the last wisdom never happens. Srutameyi prajna. We need to hear and learn the basic teachings. As practicing Buddhists, we need to know the basic formulations off by heart, the precepts, the hindrances, the levels of going for refuge, the levels of wisdom, and so on. When we know these things off by heart, they become part of our thinking and part of the way we live in the world. This is the most basic function of study. To develop this level of wisdom, we first need of all to be clear about what the study text is saying, independent of our reactions to it. To do this, we will normally need to make notes, simplifying down the main points and the main dharmic formulations. This will allow us to go into the study group confident that we know the important points, and able to give summary for the rest of the group if asked. Some people who have had an unfortunate experience of formal education have difficulty with this process. This is an area where members of the Sangha can help each other. If the process of reading and note-taking is difficult, it's very helpful to go through the text with someone else, picking out the main points, as a way of overcoming lack of confidence or experience in this area. Chintameyi prajna. This level of wisdom arises from thinking and reflecting. This includes reflecting on the Dharma on our own, but discussing a text with other Buddhists is also an effective way of developing this level of wisdom. For most people, it's an essential part of the process. We get the benefit of many different temperaments, many different life experiences, many different imaginations, and so we see what is being talked about from many different angles. It can also be easier to maintain a high level of interest and energy in a discussion than when reflecting on one's own. We can all contribute to this process of exploration by coming armed with some main points we want to emphasize, as suggested earlier. Bhavana Mahiprajna. Sometimes a Dharma group will seem to take off into magical territory, a joint exploration of truth where the ego is forgotten, where we seem to be one mind with many bodies, and where we get an idea of the living, life-changing spiritual truth behind the words of the teachings. This is bordering on Bhavana Mahiprajna. Usually we need the clarity and focus of meditation to develop this level of wisdom in its fullness. But when this does come about, it is usually as the result of a deep experience of the previous levels. We know the Dharma at the intellectual level, we have reflected on it deeply, it has become part of our thinking, it has seeped into our bones. Then, when we meditate on it, it transmutes us into another being entirely. Dharma study helps us develop Sangha. Dharma study is an opportunity to relate to other Buddhists in a Dharmic context, which reminds us to relate on the basis of our highest selves, relating from our own highest self to the highest self of the other. This relating to one another on the basis of what is highest within us is one definition of Sangha. An important aim of the study group is to create a mini-Sangha on this basis. Talking with others about the Dharma is often more helpful in this respect than talking about football, politics, everyday events or our personal problems, all of which tend to bring up the old normal lower self we present in the everyday world. Study groups are ways to work on ourselves. What usually gets in the way of developing Sangha in any group situation is our conditioned reactivity and the fact that other people push our buttons. A Dharma study group is an excellent place to work on this because it is safe, supportive, challenging, and constantly reminds us that our reactions are there to be transcended, not indulged. Building Sangha is an exercise in self-awareness and self-transcendence. Study pushes buttons, and groups of people push us into habitual roles. We need to focus as much on how we are in the group, especially the effect we have on others, as on the ideas being discussed. Possible reactions in the study situation include competitiveness, argumentativeness, shyness, withdrawal, anger at unfamiliar ideas, and so on. Possible roles include rebel, wannabe leader, good boy or girl, devil's advocate, superior observer, know-all, show-off, cynic, and joker. We need to ask ourselves, what are our habitual reactions and roles in the group? We need to find ways to stay in the gap with regard to these, and we need to look for more creative ways of being in the group that create harmony and a sense of shared inspiration. If we treat it in this way, being part of the study group becomes an exercise in mindfulness, metta, communication, and transcending our old habitual ways of being. It becomes a powerful way of practicing the Dharma in its own right.